A reminder that this is a formal meeting. I can advise that members of the public will be given an opportunity to speak during public open session, but not at other times. The meeting's being filmed, and by being present, attendees are deemed to have agreed to be filmed and to the use of those images and sound recordings. I can advise that attendees should not disclose any personal information of individuals, as this would infringe the data protection rights of that individual. Now, please ask everyone to mute their microphones when they're not speaking. Apologies for absence. I have apologies from Councillor North and Councillor somebody else. Bond? Woodhead and Bond. Bond has sent his as well. Councillor Bond has sent his as well. Right. Declarations of interest. To receive statutory declarations of interest from members in relation to firstly pecuniary interest and then non-pecuniary interest. So does anybody have a pecuniary interest? No. Anyone have a non-pecuniary interest? Also no. Okay. Item 3, Town Mayor's announcements. On Friday the 17th of March, I had the pleasure of attending the Commonwealth War Graves service, which was the unveiling of the plaque at Drove Road Cemetery. We have 2 plaques commemorating those who gave their lives in war, who are buried at buried in Drove Road. So it was a very nice service. It was a very wet service, unfortunately. We picked completely the wrong time, but there's not a lot that can be done about that. But it was well attended by the Legion, by the Sea Cadets, by the Air Cadets, and others, including some councillors. So thank you to all who came. A few days ago, I was informed of the sad passing of Desmond Bull, who that is assuming I read my emails correctly, who sadly died. I understand he was well into his 90s. So he served the town very well for a very long time, working with community groups, voluntary organisations, and others, including a lot of work with first aiders and sports clubs. I understand he also used to maintain the railway bank, which runs along the top of Lawrence Road, and we as a town council have always given money to him to continue that work, and I hope as a tribute to him we can perhaps take that over in future if the others in the community are minded to help do that as well. So could we pause for a few moments to remember Desmond, please? Thank you, everybody. Thirdly, a reminder that we have our annual assembly coming up in April, and I'd be grateful, please, if everybody who is a committee chairman could submit their reports. I think I need to as well. So I think the deadline is the 4th of April. So for those who are committee chairman, to be noted, please. Public open session to adjourn for a period of up to 15 minutes to allow members of the public to put questions or to address the council through the chairman pertaining to matters listed on the agenda. Each speaker will give their name to the chairman prior to speaking, which will be recorded in the minutes unless that person requests otherwise. Each speaker will be allowed 1 3-minute slot. Do we have anyone online? Just one. If they wish to speak, if they could show their virtual hand. Nope. Okay, we'll move on. Item 5, invited speaker. So we have Mr. Mike Wells, a Norville Parish resident, lives in Ickwell, I believe. And this is regarding the a potential underpass at the A1. So Mr. Wells, the floor is yours if you'd wish to address the council.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you for this opportunity to come and speak about it. You're probably aware that in October, Norville Parish Council voted unanimously to ask for an underpass to get into Biggleswade, and you kindly replied to them. I went to see the MP about this 3 weeks ago and showed him what I gathered so far, and in particular, the astonishing response to the LC Whip survey that we distributed this leaflet around the parish, and amazingly, 99 and probably a few more people responded saying, yes, they absolutely wanted to be able to get over to the A1 in a sustainable, safe way. And the underpass was the perfect way to do it. So my only reason here tonight is to ask you to please support that in a some strong manner to the MP so that he can go and show it to Highways England and CBC and say, guys, please get your act together. We're not after money. Nobody's got a costing, nobody's got a design, nobody's got anything. The first thing is to get the interested parties around one table and to agree that this is a necessary thing to happen. Tom Loughran's Caldicot resident, fairly new resident, I've been around for donkey's years, so there's questions about how it would affect the nearest people in Upper Caldicot. If you'll allow, perhaps Tom may be better than me to answer such questions. But
that's okay. Tom, feel free to take a seat if you'd like to at the table. Yeah.
The particular rush to sort this out was because Highways England suddenly announced last summer that they were going to close Tinky's Corner, which is the crossing from Biggleswade Road at the A1 north of Sainsbury's. This was a complete shock because we'd always understood that it was going to be closed to trucks, which would have to go up to Sandy and down again, but not to locals because it is a safe way to get across in a car if there's light traffic. Perfectly viable on a bike. It's a bit awkward coming down the pavement, down the A1, but it can be done. But it's not a footpath. It's not a legal crossing. What is a legal crossing, to my astonishment when I checked it with the council, is footpath 7, which is the southeast corner of the Woodlands estate. And that is actually a legal right of way across both carriageways of the A1. They cannot stop us walking back and forth across the A1 all day long if we like it. So this is something we need to take advantage of. And there are no plans at the moment. The nearest we've got is the developer saying if he's allowed lots more planning permission on the Woodlands estate, then he might think of paying for a footbridge. We have very strong opinions against a footbridge, which I will detail to you if necessary. But it's probably better at this point if I ask immediately if people have any specific questions, because this explains to some extent what we want. The pictures show a wonderful one that they've done at Cambridge, which I would urge you to see if you possibly could, because you just park for free in Milton, north end of Cambridge. It's a few minutes down. You go over the river on their lovely new river footbridge and down, and there you are. And the great thing about this is it completely divorces you from the road. You don't know Newmarket Road is there. You are serenely swanning along, as I saw people doing with children on bikes and one thing and another, and you're into Cambridge without having messed with the traffic at all. And this really could be what happens with Biggleswade. It could be how hundreds of people in Upper Caldicot, quite a few in Ickwell and Northville too, get into Biggleswade and do things in the town centre, as opposed to getting in their cars and going down to the south end of town or to Bedford or wherever else. I genuinely think this could help to rejuvenate the town centre with a lot of people who would use e-bikes, scooters, whatever. And it would be a great way for disabled people to get in too, because we have a hero who does it. You might have seen pictures I circulated of Pete on his scooter taking his life in his, but this is, we can't go on doing that. It's crazy. And we do have really an accelerating problem. The traffic is getting much, much worse at the Sainsbury roundabout from west to east at peak times. And there is no prospect of rerouting the A1 in any reasonable time span. So the only way to alleviate some of this traffic is get some of us lot in Northern Parish out of our cars and zipping in to Biggleswade that way. Could I see if anyone's got particular points that I should answer?
Thank you, Mr. Wells. No, that's quite right. Thank you ever so much for talking us through that. And I do remember when this came to Town Council several months ago now, I think. When did Northville Parish come to the... October, yeah, that would make sense. Yeah. That would be about right, yes. And we were wondering whether there would be any sort of formal consultation, but this lays out much clearer what how you've reached the position that you have. Do members have questions? Councillor Alban.
Yeah, I absolutely support this idea. But you said you were talking to Richard Fuller, MP. So did he indicate where funding might come from?
No, and we're artfully avoiding that question at the moment because there's no question of it coming out of Section 106. That's never going to happen. There should be money from completely new sources, from sustainable travel initiatives, stuff like that. And the developers, Solai Holdings and Barnack Estates, are really keen to get more planning permissions on the west side. So there is a deal to be done. And in connection with that, Brian Marshall has shown me the correspondence they had with Mid-Beds Council 20 years ago about building one house on that site for the manager. And they thought, no way. it's outside the envelope, you'll never be able to do it, and B, the A1 might be routed. No. So what happened was the marshal sold at agricultural value, 3,000 an acre. And the last plot of land I heard being sold on that site was 325,000 an acre. So that land, just because of planning permission granted by CBC, has gone up 10,800% in value. So there's money somewhere to do this, and it doesn't have to be little bitty Section 106 agreements.
Thank you. Councillor Strawn.
Thank you. Something like this is desperately needed, not just in that point, but the south of the northern roundabout as well. And to get a decent crossing there, it's a miracle that there's been no really serious accidents with youngsters crossing the road there and elderly people. Something's got to be done. What I have noticed from the plan is footpath number 7, which you alluded to. Now, has any thought been given to the possibility of a diversion of that footpath, particularly with developers putting funds in, which would possibly fund part or all of an underpass with the closure of Tingy's Crossing? If they're going to do works there, that might be something that's a solution. I hear the questions about Section 106 monies, but I think that's for the planning authority to determine what it's used for. And if it's not Section 106 money, they could always put potentially a planning condition on, but obviously Highways England would be involved on that because it's a national highway. But I think something like this is absolutely essential. I can remember years ago hearing that my son had crossed the A1 at roughly that point on foot when he was young and with another party of youngsters, and if I'd known about it before, I think I'd have lost my hair even quicker than I have done. I think something like this is absolutely essential, and we've got to see to work and see how it can be done to achieve it. It's only a matter of time before something serious happens there and somebody will lose their life. So the sooner it's done, the better. And if they're going to upgrade the A1 in any shape or form, such as taking away the Tingy's Crossing, which I fully support the closure of that because it is, I think, absolutely lethal one way or another. But we need some kind of alternative to allow pedestrians or cyclists to be able to get across safely. So
thank you, Councillor.
I think we should support this.
If I just take one, or do you want to respond, Mr. Wells? Then I'll take Councillor Russell.
Sorry, I said I would say why a bridge and why an underpass and not a bridge. Could I just very quickly answer?
Yes,
that?
Please.
The rationale for this is the clearance on a trunk road for a bridge has to be 4.8 meters something. The height you need for the deck of a bridge is at least 5 meters, which needs enormous long ramps to get up to it. And we've already heard from disabled people, there's no way their scooters are going to make it up there. Not just that, but such a long ramp needs level patches in case of brake failure and so on. So it's frightening for a lot of people. And there were councillors at our parish meeting who said, yeah, but I'll never use it if it's a bridge. I'm not doing it. I'll stay in my car. An underpass has clearance of 2.4 meters and you can lay the tarmac straight over the top of it. So your ramps to an underpass are very short. So shopping with a little trailer behind your e-bike was entirely feasible. Bridge, it's unworkable.
Sorry, for a point of information, I wasn't advocating a bridge.
No,
it's okay. It's
just
right,
if I could ask you for a resolution, it would be to strongly support an underpass. And on no account a bridge, please.
Thank you. Councillor Russell.
Well, I was just going to say that, Mr. Wells. May I make a formal proposal that we fully support this initiative alongside Northill Parish Council, that we should have an underpass at footpath 7, which then connects to the end of the old A1 past the tidy tip. That seems a very sensible place to be.
Thank you. Okay, I'm happy to take a proposal with this. Is there a seconder for that proposal? Yes, there is. Are there any further comments? No, it looks like we're persuaded. Not to jump the gun or anything, but I think genuinely this has been very interesting to hear, and particularly something that members haven't touched on yet, but the importance for this for Biggleswade Town Centre, I think probably shouldn't be underestimated, because there are lots of small villages which are reasonably well connected, but also large villages like Caldicot, but which rely very much on the amenities, which are the other side of the A1. So there is potentially a very big win-win there, I think. Councillor Alban, and then we'll move to a vote.
Could I just say, the Dan Alban car park is being considered for the bike hire proposal, and that is pretty near to where an underpass could be. So that opens up all sorts of other routes too.
Okay, so the proposal is to support this initiative, backing an underpass in line with footpath 7, matching up with the on the east side, the old A1 into Bells Brook. We don't need to say that we don't support a bridge, but we very much do support an underpass and support all of the work of this initiative and what they're doing. So all those in favour of that proposal, please show. That's unanimous. So we can record that formally in the minutes as a resolution, please, and then that gives you everything that you need, hopefully. And if there's anything else we can do as a council, do get in touch because we can make this a joint initiative where needed, I'm sure.
Thank you very much.
Is that all right? You're welcome.
Councillors.
Thank you. No need to stay for the rest of the meeting if you don't want to. So thanks ever so much. Item 6, members' questions. Do any members have any questions? No members with any questions? Okay. Item 7, minutes and recommendations of meetings. For members to receive the minutes of the Town Council meeting held on Tuesday the 14th of March. So we are on page 7 of the pack. We're going to go through these firstly for accuracy. So accuracy, page 7, page 8, page 9, page 10, page 11, page 12, page 13. Are we comfortable that these are a true and accurate record? Move it. Okay. If we have a pen, I can actually sign it because we've got no. Here we go. No, this is an appropriate pen for a mayor, I think. It's better than that pink one I normally sign things in and carry around with me. Okay, thanks. Item 7B, for members to receive the minutes of the finance. I'm going to need those back for matters arising, I think, sorry. For members to receive the minutes of the Finance and General Purposes Committee meeting held on 17th of January. So, Councillor Pullinger, is there anything to mention about these, or do we just note?
Just note them.
Okay. Does anybody, members, have any specific comments about these minutes? No, so we note these. Thank you. Item 8A, matters arising from the minutes I've just put over there. Peter, thank you. Thank you. I'm not used to this. I'm so pleased that we had an accurate set of minutes, so that's perfect. So we're going through for matters arising. We're on page 7. Matters arising on page 7. Page 8. Page 9. Page 10. Councillor Alban.
Thank you. So 9F. It was agreed that this is commemorative plaques, benches and memorials policy. So it was agreed that there will be an informal meeting and deferred to the next council meeting, which is this
now.
Obviously it's not on the agenda tonight. So I just wondered when we could expect the meeting and B, the policy to come back to the council.
Okay, officers, has the informal meeting taken place yet or not?
No, I can confirm it hasn't yet taken place, but the various amendments which were discussed and raised at that meeting, last meeting, have been incorporated into the version, and all we need to do now is invite, obviously, members to attend that working group, which will happen, I should say, early next week. Yeah, I think
the place shaping manager has been on leave actually, so that might be why that's just slowed ever so slightly. But hopefully we can bring that to next council. Anything else on page 10? Page 11? Page 12? Matters arising, page 13. No more matters arising. Okay, thank you. Oh, sorry, Councillor Alban, I beg your pardon. Sorry.
I'm on your blind spot. Where are we? 15B. Is regarding what's written there, is there any update on recent events that can be brought to council?
Peter or Karim, would you like to just update on that? This is Franklin's Recreation Ground, 15B, and it's the vandalism.
So yeah, and I can confirm that just this morning I received an email. Officers received an email from the security company noting that there had been a further incursion last night at 7:01 p.m. A group of youths had walked through the other side of the barrier. The security guard had obviously told them not to do that. Taken some photographic evidence of that happening, and once he had called the police, they had then moved on. So they were on site for about 5 minutes. They had not touched any of the equipment last night, and they had not touched any of the black matting which had been put down. On the other hand, they had been sort of traipsing through over the grass, etc. So the contractor sort of spotted that this morning, is not too pleased with the whole situation, but is still going to carry on doing the work essentially. A crime reference number will be generated very shortly by the police, and we are retrieving the images from the camera that we have in place tomorrow. I've asked public realm teams go up and do that, and then share those as and when we need to with the police.
Thank you. Councillor Ramsey.
Do we have any idea of the age of these youngsters? Is it school age, after school sort of age?
Karim?
Mid-teens, we'd say.
Mid-teens,
at this particular point.
Old enough to know better. Any further, hopefully that satisfies Councillor Robin. Any further updates, any further matters arising on page 13? No. Okay, then we move on. I should have mentioned under Mayor's announcements, we intend to take item 9A under exempt, because I think there's a few updates on that. So with that in mind, we're going to move to item 9B. General Insurance Renewal Update Report for members to receive and consider a report from the Head of Governance and Strategic Partnerships, Finance Manager and Deputy Administration and HR Manager. So, Prim, is there anything to update on this report before discussion? Prim? Yeah, 9B, insurance. Yeah.
Just a couple of things above the what the report already outlines. So to say that officers did meet with the BHIB broker in early March. The brokerage is one of the is the actual single largest council provider for insurance in England and Wales. And the policy has been, which is obviously included in the attachment there, has been amended, particularly to increase slightly the fidelity guarantee, which covers the town council for the amount of exposure in accounts due to the PWLB funding. The broker did confirm the market is extremely challenging, has thus been able to put forward the single quote along with a couple of other confirmations from two other large providers that they would not be able to quote due to the challenging market. And the recommendation reports are set out there, essentially. I'll pause there.
Okay, thank you. So basically, suspension of financial regulations because we couldn't get the number of quotes required, I think, but to go with this one. Councillor Pullinger?
Thank you.
With your microphone, thanks.
Yeah, so thanks. Thank you very much for the report. So I think the background as to why we've only got the single quote and the rationale for that, I think is fairly self-explanatory, and I wouldn't seek to challenge the proposal to suspend financial regulations. I think the concern I've got is really around the selection of the 1 year quote versus the 3 year quote. So the 1 year quote does, as the report says, give a 7.9% increase. By my calculations, if we went for the 3 year quote, then actually we're looking at a 0.3% increase in the first year. It may change in the second year because the motor policy would still be a 1 year policy. But essentially, we need to make a judgment as to, do we think that insurance prices are going to drop below last year's price for the following 2 years, or are they going to potentially stay the same or continue to increase? And I wouldn't foresee that there's a likelihood of insurance getting cheaper than it was last year. So I don't see why we would not lock in a lower price today, with that being available. So I'll not make a proposal until the other members have had a chance to comment, but my view would be that we ought to go with the 3-year proposal rather than the 1-year proposal.
Councillor Strawn.
I very much share Councillor Pullinger's opinion on that, in that it seems sensible, at least we cap ourselves and know exactly what our budget is for the next 3 years on the 3-year proposal. Yes, insurance premiums may go down, but they may go up as well. Doing it on the 3-year basis, I think we set it at a level, we know where we stand. I don't think we necessarily need environment in that respect. We'll effectively be within the budget for the next year, and the RFO might have observations to the contrary, but to me it seems entirely logical to give ourselves a guarantee and give the town a guarantee, rather than coming to this situation next year and finding nobody will quote for town council insurance. The only question I have is how many insurance companies were requested to quote. I know it's a very limited market from inquiries I've made as to see what the options might be, and certainly general brokers wouldn't be able to deal with this kind of thing, I don't think. But it seems to me to be entirely logical to go along the lines that Councillor Pullinger was suggesting, and if he was to make that proposal, I'd happily second it.
Thank you, Councillor Strawn. Any further comments? Councillor Pullinger, do you wish to make a proposal?
Yeah, so I would like to propose that we accept recommendation 1, and then that we resolve to renew the insurance policy as per the 3-year quote provided in the attachment, Appendix A. Yes, Appendix A. And that we don't therefore need a environment.
Thank you. Do officers have any? Oh, sorry, I beg your pardon. Is there a seconder for this proposal? That's very keen of you, Councillor Strawn. Thank you. Do officers have any comments on this or not? Grim?
Just a couple, really. Thanks, if I may. So, first one in response to Councillor Strawn's good points about which other companies were approached by the broker. I mean, the broker did actually go slightly beyond their remit after we pushed them relatively hard, and in approaching other schemes as well on the market as well. So, and he was turned down on those as well on that basis. So actually, it was several companies above the 2 that he already came back on. And in response to the 1v3 year, the broker had recommended the year 1, which is why the officers had put that in the report. Assuming rather that he could get a better deal probably from next year, and it didn't lock us into a multi-year policy. But that's the only thing I'll say on it.
Okay, thank you. Members can factor that in. Are there any further comments? No. So we have a proposal. The proposal is to accept the first recommendation to suspend financial regulations in order to make this decision, but the members resolve to renew the insurance policy for 3 years rather than 1, and that's as what is laid out in Appendix A. That's a fair summary, which doesn't require environment. All those in favour of that proposal, please show. Any against? Any abstentions? Thank you. Okay, item 9C, for bike hire proposal report. For members to receive and consider a report from the place shaping manager, who is not here. But is there anything to update on this report, or shall we just take it as it is?
Safe to say, nothing much. It's safe to say that discussions are still going on between BRCC and CBC in terms of fine-tuning those final locations, hence why it's kind of an emergent picture, certainly from their side, what comes back. That's why we've kind of come back with a report now with an update on the position of locations. Hence
probably the recommendations to provisionally agree. Yeah, no, that makes sense, despite Councillor Bond would have a fit about the split infinitive, but that's all right. I'm joking. Councillor Albert.
Yeah, I'm just wondering, so CBC are proposing to use existing bicycle racks in the town centre. Obviously, they're not ours, but I just wonder what is the expected impact on cycle parking that's there for non-hire bikes. So I don't know how many bikes are going to be likely to be stationed in the town centre, but obviously there's some kind of impact.
So if I've read the report correctly, I think it's that the recommendation here is that we're looking at the installation of bike racks in Dan Albon where there aren't currently any. So the ones that are there, I presume, would stay.
No, I'm fine with that. It's just that CBC are proposing to use existing bicycle racks in the town centre for the scheme.
Right.
So I'm just wondering about the impact on current parking provision.
Okay. Do we have any more details on that or not about which bike racks and to what extent?
Not with me, I'm afraid, at the moment.
Okay.
And I'm not sure the place shaping manager has either yet, because we've got to reach back out to CBC to get that fine tuning.
Understood.
Yeah.
There's nothing stopping us making a statement about that if we want to in that emerging picture. Councillor Knight?
Thank you. So I sort of feel this has come back to us a little bit prematurely. Perhaps maybe central beds need to be a bit clearer on what they're asking for. So I think my concerns are, I share the concern that I think we need to understand exactly which cycle racks are proposed to be used in the town centre, and we need to understand the impact of that. And I would hope that's something we could consider. In principle, I don't object to the idea of installing bike racks in another location in Dan Albon car park nearer the main road, but I'd like to understand if that was going to have an impact on any parking spaces. I'd like to understand, see an illustration of where they're going to go, to be honest. And exactly the same with Lincoln Crescent. I'd like to see details there. And I don't really understand why Central Beds have felt the need to ask us to make another decision without that level of information. So I think my proposal is that that this council supports these requests in principle, but we need to see the detail before we can formally approve the request.
Okay, is there a seconder for that proposal? There are a few seconders. Councillor Russell, you wanted to speak.
Well, I was going to go further than Councillor Knight's proposal and say that we should defer it, because we made our decisions. We had a presentation from BRCC. We made our decisions. We didn't see any problems. All of a sudden, CBC have said there are problems. Are there really problems? I'm not sure about that. So why should we agree any of this at the time being? So I would rather we just defer this until there's a substantive proposal on the table from Central Beds and BRCC, and we see whether we're happy or not. But I completely agree that we do need the detail of the town centre.
Thank you.
Withdraw my proposal.
Yes, you may. Okay. Councillor Pullinger? Was you were indicating?
Well,
sorry.
yeah. So I mean, I was going to say that I think we should still indicate that we would be happy in principle with these locations, but that we do need to see the detail. I think just deferring it and without providing any feedback to Central Bedfordshire, I don't think is necessarily going to be helpful to progressing things, which is why I would have preferred if the proposal hadn't been withdrawn. But I think it would be definitely also worthwhile making clear the point that Councillor Albo made around the town centre bicycle parking. There is a need to ensure that sufficient bicycle parking for non-scheme bikes is continued to be provided.
Thank you. Councillor Russell, sorry, yeah, go on, Councillor Russell, then Councillor Strawn, then Councillor Foster.
Well, I take on board what people are saying, and I didn't actually make a proposal because at that point Councillor Knight hadn't withdrawn, but I think I would make a proposal that we defer, but make the comments that have been said, that we want to understand why they think the current bike racks at Dan Albon are dangerous and where exactly they would put the bike racks at Dan Albon. The same with the other side, and also to understand exactly how they want to do it in the town centre. So I think we need to understand their thinking, because it might not be quite our thinking in the town. So that would be my proposal, to defer until we get that information from Central Bedfordshire.
Thank you. Okay, is there a seconder for that proposal? There are seconders. Councillor Strawn, you wish to speak?
Yes, an observation with regard to Grasmere Road, Lincoln Crescent. I do have a particular concern there, because the siting, I think, is where there used to be play equipment, which was removed from there because of the fear of flooding and the fact that it could flood and children could get seriously hurt by being in there when it actually flooded. So there is an issue there about placing the bicycle racks there because of the flooding issue, and particularly there's then going to be electricity involved. It doesn't strike me as though it may not be suitable because of that issue. So that will need to be taken into account.
Yeah, in a moment, Councillor Russell. Councillor Foster was indicating.
Yeah, you may remember on the previous presentation, I'd had sort of a challenge on some of the locations, and I think one of them was sort of the consistency of the reasoning for not using Kitelands, for example. So why would we not use Kitelands? Because it's too close to the swimming pool, but then we've got the proximity to the town centre and other areas. So there seems to be no consistency with the reasoning. For me, I think that Kitelands is a perfectly reasonable location for us for this to be proposed, albeit we haven't got any cycle racks there or any a huge number there. But I think that maybe I'm wrong on that. But I think location-wise, it would be more appropriate than Grassmere, in my view. But I understand the reasoning around the green wheel link. But the fact that we're looking to try and encourage people to use these things, and then we're putting them in a location that's sort of not central, just doesn't seem right to me. And then the other location, that Dan Albo, again, is sort of towards the end of, it's not close to a residential area. There is a residential nearby, whereas if it were the other end of the park, so right within the cricket field end, I think you'd get more use of it for people within the residential area. But I suspect that my comments are not going to be heard particularly, but I'd like to go on record that I think there needs to be more thought around the locations, not just because we've got cycle racks in place at the moment.
Thank you. Councillor Russell?
Just to say that I'd like to add what Councillor Strawn said. He's quite right about that site, and I think we should add that to the feedback that we give to Central Bedfordshire.
Okay.
Please.
Yeah. Okay. Are there any last comments? No, so we have a proposal. The proposal is to defer this, requesting further information really around the rationale for why the locations are those which are being proposed, and to get more detail on the very specifics of that, which part of Dan Alban, which part of near Grasmere Close, which part of the town centre, and to explain that properly so that we can consider it in full. Is that a fair summary? Including Councillor Strawn's comments about potential concerns around flooding near Grasmere Road. I might just say from the chair, something I do think we need to be very careful of is, if I'm not mistaken, one of the allocated green spaces in the neighbourhood plan is right next to Dan Alban car park. Am I right in saying that? I'm pretty sure it's one of the 15. If it's not, well, either way, it's certainly a pocket of greenery that we need to treat very carefully because there's not a huge amount there. Okay, all those in favour of the proposal, please show. Any against? No. Thank you. Okay. I think it is one of the 15. I'm not sure. Item 9D, Drove Road Chapel Update Report. For members to receive and consider a report from the place shaping manager. Do we have any updates on this, Peter?
Only briefly to say good progress is being made connected to this particular project. It's a 3-year project, the members will remember. When we originally looked at the specification and work associated with this, it was extremely difficult without scaffolding to get to the very top of the chapel, because obviously it's quite a significant height. When you actually get the scaffolding up and look at the very top of the building, there was some other additional works that were not identified in the initial scoping exercise, which we're looking at repointing and stone masonry and et cetera, et cetera. That was key to be done whilst the scaffolding was up. And the consequence of this effectively is that some of the work that doesn't rely on scaffolding needs to be pushed into year 2 and year 3. As a consequence of that, there are additional costs associated with the overall programme. Those additional costs net down to approximately 15,000 when you take into consideration the ward councillor's grant that Councillor Ian Bond has kindly provided. So the net additional costs of the overall programme are approximately £15,000, and they're detailed within the report. The second brief element associated with this is that because it's a very old building and it's listed, you kind of find things that aren't originally identified. It's an emerging project. So what we would like to do, we have a project manager who is of course a listed building project manager, which we've commissioned. We do give him a sense of a delegated authority to proceed with this, subject to the constraints that I've listed on page 34. Thank you.
Thank you, Peter. Any comments? Councillor Alban?
Yeah, so So I'm assuming that the additions for scaffolding was extra scaffolding that was required. Yeah. So in the table just beneath that on page 41, we've got a repair patch provisional sum of only £250 and moving to phase 2. I wonder if you could explain what that is and yeah, for a small sum, why we need to move
that's
it.
original specification.
Just microphone, please. Sorry.
Signed off. So without going back to the spec, I don't know what that refers to, but that's the original spec that you did.
It just seems such a small sum to
Go back and
move.
ask.
Okay. Rob, Councillor Pullinger, sorry.
Thank you. So mine's a bit more of a technical money question. So the additional 15,000 being sourced from year one underspend, but of course the overall project is still going to cost £15,000 more, or 17 net of, and then nets down. So is it intended that the budget for year 2 is increased by 15,000, or the budget for year 3 is increased by 15,000? Okay. And then in relation to the second bullet point, just to be clear on what's proposed to be delegated. So the expectation that the project manager will still manage within each year's budget, not the 2 years combined, because obviously from a funding perspective, we manage it on a year-by-year basis. And secondly, if we are going to delegate the authority in this way, which I don't have an issue with in principle on those terms, I think it would still be helpful for council to receive a similar report to this on a regular basis.
Thank you. Okay. Were there specific questions there, Councillor Pullinger, or was that more of a statement? Did you have
they were sort of, I would like, if the clerk can, he did by nodding of his head confirm his agreement with what I said, but it was sort of a question.
Yeah, I'd be very happy to answer. The answer is yes to the first question. In regard to the second point, I would stress though that our place shaping manager is our internal project manager associated with this. You're going to be having regular status reports associated with this. We're going to manage any associated risk associated with this. So yeah, there's a constant flow of information, and I do hope that it doesn't, that the old building doesn't show us any other unfortunate elements that we're currently aware of. I was there today, by the way, when the scaffolding was coming down.
Perfect. Thank you, Councillor Strawn.
I think just the most important thing is, if we do give this delegated authority to the external project manager, that the council should receive a written report from him on a regular basis, just to confirm the situation. I appreciate we may have our own internal member of staff dealing with it, but I think it should come to council quite specifically.
Thank you. Okay, Peter, do you want to just respond?
That's already been organised by as part of the process. So we do get regular reports which are shared with members. No
recommendation. I think it should be.
Councillor Pullinger.
So I'll make a proposal then, if that's okay. So I propose to accept the recommendations, but to add that we council would expect a regular written report from the external project manager to the internal project manager, and that regular reports are provided to council.
Thank you. Okay, is there a seconder for that proposal? Yes, there is. Any further comments? No, so the proposal is that we accept the recommendations as laid out, plus third point around receiving, was the word regular? Regular updates from the project manager to council. So all those in favour of that proposal, please show. That is everybody. Thank you. Item 9E, Play Streets proposal report for members to receive and consider a report from the play shaping manager. So this is a proposal from, I think is this an official Central Bedfordshire consultation or not? I'm not sure. Councillor Knight.
Thank you. I'm afraid I'm going to be a miserable what's it. I don't support this proposal or this recommendation. In fact, I think it's ridiculous. I don't think we should be encouraging children to play in the streets or in the road. I think that's encouraging dangerous behaviour. We're very lucky within Biggleswade. We have quite a significant number of green spaces, and I would love to see volunteer-led, central bed supported group activities in some of those play areas. I think that would be a lovely thing to do, and I think I'll wait to hear what other members have to say before making a proposal, but my sense is we should write back suggesting that perhaps they look to organise activities in some of our play areas and open spaces rather than potentially causing chaos on the roads or encouraging children to play in areas where they really shouldn't be playing.
Thank you, Councillor Knight. Councillor Alman.
I have to say I completely disagree with all of that that's just been said. I was lucky, being the generation that I am, we could just play in streets wherever because the traffic wasn't like what it is today, and it was relatively safe. So this is about closing roads from time to time to allow this kind of activity. And why should car be king all of the time? It's terrible that kids nowadays can't play safely in the streets. We heard Councillor Strawn earlier worrying about his boy crossing the A1. Obviously, that's slightly different, but parents should be able to allow the kids out without keeping their eye on them all the time and expect them to be safe. So I would fully support this scheme.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Russell and then Councillor Pullinger.
I'm with Councillor Knight on this one. We're talking about 2 hours a month, which is something and nothing. We're talking about volunteers policing it. We have a comment in the scheme about, but the children are still the parents' responsibility, which is an obvious thing. I completely agree that if volunteers were prepared to organise things in our play areas, that would be good. My key problem with this is that once children go and play in the street for a couple of hours, that the younger ones won't necessarily recognise the danger when the street's not closed. And it's all very well going back to when we were kids, but things are very different now. I mean, David and I are a similar age, and it's a long while ago when we were playing in the street. And I don't think we should go back to that. So I'm fully in favour of telling Central Beds no to this. But if they want to send us packs of play equipment and organise volunteers, fine. But in our play areas rather than in the street.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Pullinger.
Thank you. I agree with Councillor Knight and Councillor Russell. I mean, even the photo in their pack showing the children playing on a road with cars parked down both sides. Who's going to be responsible when someone scoots into one of those vehicles or a ball damages someone's wing mirror or whatever it might be? I mean, it is completely a ridiculous proposal. I mean, when I was a young child, a few decades ago, not as many as some others, but we did play in the street, but the roads were a lot quieter then. But I think the other thing is in Biggleswade in particular, we're very lucky that we have got quite a lot of green space near our residential properties that can be used, whether it's our play areas or other areas. And I think it's absolutely right. We should encourage those to be used, and any play schemes that CBC can come up with that encourages use of the play space that is available now is a positive thing. But I think it is completely wrong that we encourage children to play in the road at some times when, frankly, it's far too dangerous for them to do it most of the time.
Okay. Okay. We are looking for a proposal at some point, I think. Councillor Ramsey.
I just wanted to say that I agree with my colleagues over here, because as parents, we go to a great deal of trouble, or we should, to make sure that they know that streets are not safe places, that they need to look what they're doing, they need to look where they're going, they've got to be careful what they do, and don't run out in between cars and all the rest of it. And to suddenly say, actually, every other Wednesday at 2 o'clock, that's fine. But you can't do it on a Thursday morning, or you can't do it on a Tuesday afternoon. It's totally confusing, and it will confuse the motorists because they won't know when the road's going to be closed or not. I think the whole thing is a nice little pipe dream, but I really don't think in real life it's going to work.
Thank you. Councillor Mark Foster.
Okay, I think I'd like to welcome the ambition of this project. I think the principle is admirable. I think I echo the thoughts of my colleagues here, really, and I understand Councillor Abrams' position. I think when you look at it, we do want to encourage children to be active, and there may well be pockets of the town, though, that where this sort of thing might well be more appropriate than others. I think there are areas where there's less play equipment than others. But on balance, I'm in agreement here with my colleagues that I don't think we're in a position that in Biggleswade particularly, it's something that is necessary. So for that reason, I won't be supporting the recommendation. But I think we should write back to CVC sort of welcoming the suggestion, but if it's not going to work for us in Biggleswade.
Okay, I'm looking for a proposal, please. Councillor Russell.
In that case, I'll make a proposal that we go back to CVC and say we don't support this idea at all, but we would welcome if they would organise more formal play in some of our open spaces in the town, which are much safer. I think that is more or less what we were saying.
Thank you. Is there a seconder for that proposal? Yes, there are seconders. Any further comments? Councillor Pullinger.
Just I would ask that some of the reasons are also documented in the response as to why we don't support it, not just to say that we don't support it. And just one anecdotal evidence around the road closure piece specifically. So in the past, the Scouts used to have a St George's Day parade in the town. And the road closures for that were enforced by volunteers, or attempted to be enforced by volunteers. The fact is, drivers ignore volunteers, and there have on more than one occasion nearly been serious incidents as a result of that. And so relying on volunteers to close roads doesn't work and isn't safe in my view.
Thank you. Should we just, so some of the reasons, are you comfortable with including some of the reasons, Councillor Russell? So some of the reasons are young children. Councillor Knight, you can
I was going to say, so it's the grounds
of
safety, who's responsible for any damage that's caused to vehicles or property, and ultimately it's about teaching young children potentially very dangerous behaviours, and we don't think that's acceptable. But I think within the communication we should say, we support the ambition of more organised activities for young children. Just this particular idea unfortunately doesn't have our support, but naturally using our green spaces.
Thank you. Councillor Russell, do you want to just summarise and we'll move to a vote?
Well, I'm very happy with what's just been suggested. It's interesting what Councillor Pullinger has said, so perhaps we should add also that we have experience of drivers or drivers ignoring volunteers on duties like this. So I think that's quite important. So the proposal is to go back to central beds and say we don't support what they're trying to do. We like the idea of it, but there are various things that we're worried about, particularly teaching children bad habits, the possibilities of damage to cars and whatever, and the volunteers being ignored when they try to close roads. I think that's basically it.
Yep, thank you. Okay, and the seconder's happy with that, I presume, whoever that was. Okay, all those in favour of that proposal, please show. Any against? Any abstentions? Thank you, that's carried. Item 10, planning applications. 10A, 2 Home Crescent. So demolition of existing garage and erection of a 2-storey dwelling. Any comments? Councillor Knight?
I propose we object on the grounds of overdevelopment.
Okay, that's been seconded. Any further comments? No, we're objecting on the grounds of overdevelopment. Okay, all those in favour of that proposal, please show. Any against? Any abstentions? Okay, that's carried. Item 10B. 11 Arnold Rise, converting part of an existing garage into a small office and a new window to the rear. Any comments on this, colleagues? No objection, subject to neighbours? Okay, I'm seeing nods. 10C, 14 Simpson Lane, installation of 2 first floor level, that's poorly worded, isn't it? Installation of air conditioning units, side elevation. This hasn't got the word ecclesiastical in there. I've been working on that for the last fortnight. Right, air condition, 14 Simpson Lane. Comments, Councillor Pullinger.
Pros, no objection, subject to neighbours and the other wording that we have now.
Okay, anybody, are we okay with no objection, subject to neighbours? Okay, yes, I'm seeing nods, thank you. 10D, 107 London Road, rear side extension with timber post to support flat roof and carport. That was easier, all one syllable. Any comments? Subject to neighbours? Yeah, we're okay with that, thank you. 10E, so land at Springfield Bungalow and Stratton Farm Cottages, London Road. This is on Stratton Business Park, and I think it is the Tritax development. Comments, Councillor Alban.
Yeah, I think we should object using the same wording as we did before, but in addition, that various officer comments should be taken into consideration. I'm thinking of the sustainable transport, access to the site, the rights of way concerns that were expressed by officers, and that's things like the surface for the right for a path which is proposed to be grasscrete, which is not very suitable for a right of way. Archaeology conditions, so investigation and recording of archaeological deposits, but preservation in situ if that is an appropriate method. And there's also some ecology issues that officers are concerned about. But also, I'd like, obviously there's going to be a traffic impact on traffic in accessing London Road here, and the Pegasus Drive London Road roundabout is all right, already pretty you see queues and queues of traffic there. And that area, because we've got two roundabouts close by, is very, very difficult for pedestrians. So if you wanted to cross, for instance, from Lidl to where the Halford store is, it's virtually impossible as a pedestrian. So I think that area needs a lot of examination, especially considering that we expect the traffic to increase as a result of this development.
Okay, so is that a proposal, Councillor Alban?
Yes, I'm not sure I worded it very well, but yeah.
Yes,
that's
it's okay. But in summary, it's to refer to our previous objections, but noting the comments that officers have
to do with sustainable transport, rights of way, and archaeology and ecology.
Thank you.
And pedestrian safety, particularly at the Pegasus Drive, London Road roundabouts.
Thank you. Councillor Foster. Oh, sorry, is there a seconder for that proposal? There are seconders. Councillor Foster wants to speak. Councillor Foster.
I would like to add to that really, and particularly in relation to the roundabout. Councillor Fage will understand my relative obsession with that particular roundabout, given that it's only a single lane access into A1 or into the town. So that something needs to be done to that roundabout in one way or the other, because coming out of sort of Halfords and Pets at Home or Lidl onto that roundabout, or indeed on from the business park, it's always busy there. And I think we need to do something about that from a traffic point of view, but also I think that there is the concern around the pedestrian access as well. But I think we do need to make sure we reference that within here. I do support the objection to it, but I'm minded that there is potential other expansion that might go ahead on the business park, and it does need to be resolved.
Yeah, thank you. And I think just to note, it's obvious that consistency from us as a council is important when it comes to Stratton Business Park. I know we've historically been supportive, but also it's clear that there's a huge amount of pressure. Further comments? No, so the proposal is to object, and to do so referring to our previous comments, but also adding the concerns around pedestrian safety, queues of traffic, ecology, archaeology, and the rights of way? Rights of way and sustainable transport was the other one, which I think we should have. Did we mention that in our original comments? Not sure. Oh yes, we do mention it in our original comments, but no harm in saying it again. Any last comments? No, so the proposal is to object. All those in favour of that proposal, please show. That is everybody, thank you. 11A, planning application outcomes, report of planning application outcomes as of 20th of March. Comments? Note it? No, we're noting it. Okay, thank you. Item 12, accounts. We don't have any at this meeting. We do have accounts, but they're not on the agenda. Item 13, items for information. CCTV update report for members to receive a written report from the place shaping manager. Officers, is there anything to update on this, or can we open up to comments?
If I may just briefly, just on top of the report, let me just get a little bit more detail, which is pertinent. The meeting that officers sat through with CBC officers and the head there of community safety, we touched on the fact that, that the CBC confirmed that they considered the fact that the legal agreement offer that we'd put on the table for the novation of the fixed line was still open, but they confirmed that although having they considered it, they wouldn't actually proceed with that at all. They did lay out the alternative direction of travel, essentially, which is what the report details, and their expectation is that by early May at the latest, they will have been, CBC will have been able to verify and sign off a new fibre line for themselves, and thus at the same time novate across this long withheld agreement to us for us to do our work.
Thank you, Grim. Councillor Pullinger.
Thank you, and thank you for the report. I mean, it's very frustrating that CBC have been obstructing us effectively from moving forward onto our new CCTV cameras and actually improving the safety and things for our residents. It is what it is. I think from that perspective, I think it's good evidence of why we're doing the right thing, I think, in separating our CCTV provision from the CBC provision. So I do have a couple of questions though. And it's really around any impact that this delay to installation may have on, or may have had on, the contract that we've got with the provider that's going to install our new equipment and provide and service that new equipment. And for us, have they already purchased the equipment? Is the price and cost of that locked in now? Is there any potential that because of the delay, there might be any increase in cost? And are there any other impacts in relation to that contract?
Krim, do you want to respond to that, or Peter?
Yeah, thanks. So in response, Councillor Plunger, I can confirm that the kit has been ordered, has arrived, and is being paid for, such as we still is still in transit between, because of the arrangements the CBC have dictated regarding S106, is still going through ourselves, both up the chain in terms of purchase order and down the chain in terms of receipts and netting off. So that's happening. Our own provider is, in quotes, metaphorically chomping at the bit to sort of install everything as fast as they can. Indeed, just earlier last week, we'd written off to CBC to ask them with the detailed as is and where to map for all of their current and future locations for their cameras, so that we can kind of install ours at the same time, and so that once the line has been verified for themselves, we can then install our own. The last point is that we've been in touch with BT Openreach, asking them how long it would take to, what's the window, if you like, for installation of a new fibre line for ourselves. It's still in the region of around 6 to 10 weeks from the moment that the innovation agreement would be signed across, which would take 1 week, no more.
Okay, so in terms of the timelines, we're looking at 10 weeks from the middle of May, but in terms of the price, in terms of the price of whether it's installation or the equipment we've purchased, that is locked in, am I right in thinking? Yes, okay. Any further comments, Councillor Strawn?
Yes, it's taken almost 4 years to get to this point since we started this, which is absolutely appalling. What I would hope, and it's quite clear if this council isn't going to see that fulfilled, but has the wording of the novation agreement, everything with regard to the novation agreement being agreed in place, ready for the moment that it can be novated. So at that stage, all it will need is a signature, rather than finding we've got another 6 weeks, 8 weeks for the lawyers to get their job done to make the novation agreement work. I think it's important that we have that novation agreement agreed in place. And I think a report to the first meeting of the new council would be appropriate, because that fits in quite nicely. But what I would, if we haven't got that agreement agreed in wording, could that be agreed now, so that can be just signed and agreed as soon as it's available?
Krim?
Thanks. In response to Councillor Strawn, yeah, I mean, the innovation agreement is actually a rather straightforward, in quote, straightforward legal document template, which is generated by BT Openreach, and it's ready to be filled in no more than about 10 places, essentially, with the donating organisation, the recipient organisation, and the kind of conclusion to it. So yes, it is rather, in that sense, it's straightforward.
Thank you. Lastly, Councillor Strawn.
Just coming back on that, have we got the copy of that blank agreement in place, and have we filled in all the details so that it quite literally all it needs will be a signature on as soon as it's possible? Because I just don't want any further delay on it. It's been going on, as I say, the best part of 4 years. We had a first meeting with other authorities in about June 2019, and we still haven't got there. It's just not acceptable. So can we make sure that there is no further delay?
Thank you. Lastly, Karim.
Yeah, thanks. Just to confirm, we have had that novation agreement sitting in our inboxes and printed off, ready to go since, unfortunately, last October, which, and it's still sort of, it's warming up nicely now for early May. That's the best way I can put it.
Good. So it's still, so yes is the answer to your question. I must just stress it does predate any of the officers who've been dealing with this. So they have picked up things that have been in various states at various points across the last 4 years, but we're nearly there. Any final comments? No. So are we okay to note this report? Yes. Item 14, public open session to adjourn for a period of up to 15 minutes to allow members of the public to put questions or to address the council through the chairman in respect of any other business of the council. Speakers should give their name and we'll have 1 3-minute slot. So do we have anybody online? Okay, if you want to speak, just show your virtual hand, please. Anyone? Nope. Okay. So we have a number of exempt items. So is somebody okay to move that we go into exempt session to discuss this?
Move it.
Thank you. Don't know where the gavel is, but